What's going on, everybody? If you don't know, now you do know. You're officially tuned in to another special edition of the HFWB podcast series. I'm your host, Clifton Pope, and with me today, I have a very special guest who's turned into a very great friend and a very great supporter of mine, and I definitely want to bring her on board. You may not recognize her, but you may possibly recognize her as well. I mean, she's been on KRIS 6 News. For everybody who's watched KRIS 6 News, she's basically was like in charge of getting like all the reporting and the stories and stuff like that. So I figured, why not reach out to her and kind of flip the script on her? With that being said, let me welcome Miss Chelsea Torres to the HFWB podcast series. Thank you for coming on, Chelsea.
Clifton, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate you and what you're doing and educating people. So thank you for just having me. I'm very grateful to you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. For those who are currently listening to the podcast right now who don't know exactly who you are and what your background is, elaborate on that for the people today, Chelsea.
Sure. Man, I've never explained it like this. So I was a reporter and anchor for KRIS 6 News in Corpus Christi. And I did that from May 2017 to about December of 2020, or no, January 2021, actually. So about a year ago, around this time, actually, is when I stopped working for KRIS 6. And then I started working for the city of Corpus Christi. And now I'm going back into news, but now I'm in San Antonio. So.
I got you. I got you. For everybody who hasn't watched KRIS 6 News before, tell us how did you get started with them and how did you build yourself up through the KRIS 6 News and everything?
Sure, that's a really good question. So I actually graduated college back in 2013, December of 2013. I knew I wanted to do reporting, but I really wanted to do sports reporting at the time. So I started in 2017 at KRIS 6, and from 2013, or I guess 2014 until 2017, I was just working a lot of part-time jobs that I could get. I was working at a news station here, part-time, and I worked at a radio station. I also worked for a amateur sports team. It was a soccer team here in San Antonio, and I did all of their interviews. So just to build up my reel as much as I could. And then I was applying all the time. I mean, constantly applying to news stations all over the country. It didn't matter where I went. I just wanted a job. And luckily, KRIS 6 called me. And it was like the beginning of 2017, maybe like around February, March. And I started, at the beginning of May. And when I started, I think one thing that people don't realize is that, you kind of have your set position. They tell you, okay, you're going to be doing the weekend mornings, or you're going to be doing this or whatever. But I really wanted to do sports. And so I just told them like, okay, cool, I'll do that. But if you need help anywhere else, I can do that too. So if you need help doing Friday night football, I'll help you doing there. If you need help doing this or that or the other, I'll do it. And I think because of that, I stretched myself thin, but I enjoyed the job. And
So it's funny how you wanted to originally do sports reporting, and then of course you tie that into journalism and everything. Where did those passions come from as far as for sports and for journalism, and what made you decide, I want to put this together and put the best possible stories out for that?
Yeah, no, great question. So I think when it came to sports, the reason why I wanted to do that, it was just more fun. At the time, I wasn't even watching local news. And so to me, I always grew up, my parents watching local news. And I thought, that's so boring. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Right? Yeah, I don't want to do that at all. And sports was fun because I kind of had a dabble in it. So I understood what it was like every day. And it was just so much fun. I really enjoyed it. And you get to learn about the players, the team itself. And I think that's kind of where I thrived more, was getting to show people what those players were really like, what the team was really like when they're not on the court or on the field. Well, when I got hired at KRIS 6, I wasn't doing sports originally. I was doing news. And so I was like, okay, that's fine. Whatever I got to do. And you learn very quick because every single day is a completely different story. And they don't want something that's going to be, they want you to have a different story from what the other station is going to have. Right. And you have to have your own story. You already have to have your own people that you're going to talk to. So it's a lot of work for the minute and a half that you see on TV. But what I liked about it and what I fell in love with was that I got to know what's going on in the community. I talk to people every single day. I learn something new every single day. Like I mean, you have this organization, you have this business, and so my thing was, okay, how did you even get started? Why are you so passionate about it? I want people to know why this is so important to you. And so because of that, I got to, share those kinds of stories. And of course, you have the breaking news, and I also got to do sports here and there, but being able to kind of show off what people were doing in the community was why I liked it so much.
And that's what it's all about, getting the right message out there and making sure the community stays informed. And that's one thing I actually admired about you from afar, Chelsea, because I remember within that time frame, like you said, I'm working at KRIS 6 News. I would always turn on the news and I would always see you, and I would think, man, I feel like she has like every other story. Every time I'm turning on the news, I'm seeing you report something. It was crazy, but it
That's
shows
funny.
how passionate you were as well,
Mhm.
which leads to this question I have for you. Is the best and the worst story that you had to do during that stretch that you could recall?
Oh, okay. Well, I can tell you the worst. And it actually didn't even end up becoming a story, but it started out as one. So it was right after Harvey. And
Oh,
so during Harvey, we were stuck at the station. I say stuck, but we kind of were stuck. Like we had to stay the night at the station. And that was our job, was to report on everything that's going on, because people were getting their news on our streaming sites or on Facebook. Nobody could watch regular TV.
oh,
So we were working around the clock and we were sleeping there at the station. Well, this is already maybe like the Monday after, I guess.
yeah.
And yeah, and I think it was over out at like, I don't know, it was somewhere out in Calallen near the river.
Yeah.
And somebody had heard that somebody had drowned out there. So
Mm,
they were thinking at the time, oh, that could be one of the first deaths reported by Harvey, because that's kind of a thing. You have to understand, not only are we obviously showing people what's going on in the community, but around this time, because news was so hard to get,
yeah.
we weren't really sure if people, we weren't really sure how many people were affected in the fact were they hurt, did anybody die from this? We were still at those beginning stages.
Right.
So they had asked me to go out to this family's home
Mm,
where this person allegedly had passed away or drowned in the river. And I'm thinking, okay, I drive out there, and of course, police are out there. They have things, barricaded up, and I start walking over. And at first, I think I talked to, I don't know, maybe a daughter, or I don't know, it was a group of family members.
mhm.
And I told them, or I just asked them, I was like, do we know if this is caused by Harvey? And at first they were okay with talking to me. I go back to my car to grab all of my equipment, and really I already had it set up. I just went to go across the street to grab it. And as soon as I came back, somebody starts coming out yelling, and they're like, no, we don't want to talk to you. We don't want to talk to the news. And yeah, and it really just like, okay, I get it. I totally understand, sensitive subject.
Mm,
I didn't, and it's one of those things where I didn't choose that, but I'm literally doing what I'm told. And I respected it, because I think if I was in their position, I don't think I would want to talk to anybody either. Whether,
what is?
yeah, exactly. It's just one of those things like, I'm a person too. I understand exactly. I don't understand how you're feeling, but I totally get that you can be
You get the picture.
completely upset. Yes, I get that. And so I respected it and I left. And I went back to the station. I was like, yeah, I don't know what happened, but they weren't going to talk. There was nothing that they could tell me. And I just left it at that.
What more could you say after a situation like that? And it's crazy how you focus primarily on Harvey, because I remember being at my mom's house, her streaming, trying to stream. I think it was like the weather at the time, and I think I remember
Mhm.
listening to literally Dale Nelson at the time talk about the storm as it was happening, as it was approaching, and we were just getting bad signals on like a little fuzzy little radio that she had. It was crazy. And I'll never forget that for sure. That's something I'll definitely never forget.
Clifton, I think you're
All right. No, but I was saying I remember listening to the news like on a little radio my mom had, and I can imagine the struggle that y'all were going through. And I always thought to myself, I wonder what y'all do in situations like that during storms. And you basically just answered the question I've always had. Y'all basically stay at the station and report it
Mhm.
literally around the clock. That right there is just dedication within itself. And I appreciate you for giving us the exclusive and kind of just telling everybody, hey, this is how it is. I mean, we
Mhm.
all have to adjust and adapt too, just like everybody else. Do you have any stories that stuck out to you like, man, this is the one of the best stories I think I've ever done, and I'll never forget this?
Yeah, there's been a couple. One in particular was I actually got a tip. So when we get story ideas, we have to have a new story every day.
Yeah.
And so a lot of our stories and hi.
Okay. You were saying about this, you had to come up with new stories and everything.
Yes. So every day we had to come up with a different story. And one in particular, I had heard from a truck driver who was saying that, he drove all the time, obviously, but on Crosstown, there was a portion of lights that were completely out.
Mhm.
And, we would have to, I was working the morning news at the time. So we had meetings at 3 a.m. So whenever you get up for work, obviously we're out before the sun is up. And I remember all the time driving on Crosstown at this specific time, and it was so dark. And that was his issue, was that it was a safety hazard. And, we need to get that, we need to bring light to that. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. I did a story on it. The next morning, we were out there live, and I even had my photographer turn off the lights so you could see how dark it was. And it was pitch black. I mean, completely dark outside. And for people driving, on the highway, rushing to work or whatever, it's obviously not safe. And then anyways, and I had already reached out because Crosstown is part of TxDOT. It's not necessarily a city street. So that's going to be the Texas Department of Transportation that's in charge of those lights. And I remember when I had called them the day before, the guy had kind of given me some attitude. And I said, hey, man, I just got a call that the lights are out. I'm just trying to find out, is that already in the plans to be replacing them? Do we know if they're going to be getting replaced? Like, I'm just trying to find some answers. And anyways, I did the story the next morning. And then later that afternoon, he calls me and he says, Chelsea, we're going to have crews out there today to fix those lights. And the next thing you know, the next morning, the lights were getting fixed, and now you can see on Crosstown. So I thought that was kind of cool. I think, yeah, it was really, I actually felt like, okay, I'm making a difference, even if it's something small that not everybody sees or notices. It's the little things. I think another story that I really enjoyed doing, this guy, gosh, he was probably one of the oldest World War II vets in Corpus Christi.
Okay.
And yeah, and he had just died. And so I had to do his story, and just kind of, like a memorable type story. And I reached out to some of his family members, and I think in one of those kinds of things, it's a little difficult because all you have are pictures, right? You're just working with pictures. You can't go out and get fresh video, because that was my job too. I had to go out and get all the interviews, do them myself, and get all of the video and do that myself. And then I edit everything, and then I write the actual story. So it is a lot of work. And I thought, yeah, and I thought, man, this isn't, I feel like I'm not going to, do that great on this story, just because visually it wasn't as enticing. But after, the story aired, I was like, okay, cool. I'm happy I got to at least do that. And I think it was his nephew that reached out to me and was just so happy, so proud. And he was like, you really did my uncle justice. Thank you so much for everything that you've done. We appreciate you. And that really made me feel good. So those two in particular, I guess, have stood out in the past couple of years that I can think of off the top of my head.
Those are great stories right there within itself, and that should inspire someone who wants to get into journalism. Like, hey, you can have moments like this, and you can
Hmm.
have moments like that. What would you tell someone who's listening to this podcast right now if they want to get into journalism, reporting? What would be your three pieces of advice you would give them?
3 pieces of advice. Understand that it doesn't pay a lot of money. You're not in this for the money. So I think if yeah, because that's the thing. I think some people think it's very glamorous and it has its perks, but you shouldn't get into this thinking you're going to make some big bucks. So you have to get into, and it's a grind, so you have to get into this really knowing that you love the work that you're doing every single day. Another piece of advice, don't be scared to stand up for yourself. You're going to have people that hate the news, especially now. And so you may try to talk to somebody about something and they may get mad at you, yell at you, start yelling profanities at you, whatever it may be. And you just got to take it with a grain of salt, and not only that, but when you post a story, the worst thing to do is go on Facebook when they post your news story and read all of the comments. It's interesting, but people get very heated on social media. And so, yeah, it's just, one of those things you can't take it to heart. You just have to take it with a grain of salt. Okay, they didn't like my story. Well, oh well, but if my producer liked it and if my directors liked it and everybody likes it at the station and they understand how news is, then
that's all that matters.
that's all that matters. So definitely, yes. So definitely, so yeah, number 1, know that it doesn't pay a lot. Number 2, always stand up for yourself. And number 3, be the hardest worker in the room. Again, it's a grind. And if you're okay with, picking up a morning shift and waking up at 2, 3 a.m., just know that the morning news usually has a lot of viewership. So if you're really trying to get that exposure, that's a great place to start. And you can't, pick and choose about what your shift is going to be because you'll get moved around a lot. The newsroom changes all the time. You'll work weekends, you'll work nights, you'll work early mornings. And, you just have to be a hard worker and understand that that's just part of the job.
That is great advice from Miss Chelsea Torres, who's done that. For those who are listening right now to this podcast, who are thinking about getting into journaling based off the interview you're listening to right now, those are 3 pieces of advice coming from someone who's done it. Know that it's about the passion. It's about, of course, getting the right story out, and it's all that stuff wrapped into one. And it's a grind. And it's kind of like what I like to feed myself on, which is activating the mind to the grind. And you could apply that to anything, including what you're doing. So that's the number 1 thing. You got to be a hard worker and you got to be a grinder for those who are listening right now. But overall, I want to ask you this interesting question before I wrap things up here a little bit. Based on what you're doing, as far as journaling and reporting, where do you see it heading in the next few years down the line? Like, what do you think is the future of it?
So I think what we've all seen is that mainstream media is something that people do not pay too much attention to, right? Like CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. That's kind of more people, it seems more people are kind of getting away from that. Yeah, but what's great though, Clifton, is I feel like podcasts are kind of the move of the future when it comes to news. And it's because you have an open platform. You can, talk to someone like me and we can talk about so many different things and you're not limited to time. The thing about news is that you're limited to time. So and so I can work a whole 8 hours, but all you're going to see from what I did that whole 8 hours is a minute, maybe less, maybe a minute and a half, if I'm lucky, a little bit longer. So the way that I see it is more digital stories. Everything, is on our phone. Everything is on the computer. So even nowadays, a lot of people don't really have cable. So it's like you have to download the KRIS 6 app or download this app or that app just to watch the news stories. But if you see it on your phone, on social media, then at least that way it's still getting out there and you're still educating people, letting people know what's going on. So I see it definitely staying digital because it's kind of already headed that way anyway, and moving there. But I see it kind of going more into long form, maybe local news is kind of I don't know, maybe more into a podcast form where you can have these open-ended conversations with all of these experts or different people who are doing things in the community. And, you know, you can really get the story out in a different way, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And it's funny that you say that as far as podcasts being a new wave, because it still blows my mind to this very day that my podcast is growing the way that it is. And it's like podcasts are basically like the new version of like radio shows and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. Everybody and anybody who is like famous or like athlete or some sort of entertainer, they have their own podcast because it gives them a platform to where it's like, okay, I can say whatever I want, believe in whatever I want to believe in. And so I can bring people who support that vision and let them tell their side of the story, which is kind of what I'm kind of doing here with the HFWB podcast, and the reason why I'm starting to expand, and which is why I told myself I need to get more guests, get people in on board, this and that. So it's funny how you mentioned podcasts being a thing of the future, because I think you might be onto something here, because I think that's exactly where it's headed. Because like I said, everybody who I know has some sort of a podcast. That's for sure. That is without question. Oh,
Well,
but that's pretty much how I feel as far as podcasts being a new thing. And if anything, Chelsea, I personally recommend that you should start your own podcast too. It's very fun. And you have the personality for it. I can definitely see that.
thanks, Clifton. You know, I listen to podcasts all the time. And I started, and I started listening about, gosh, when I was in college. So I was almost 10 years ago when I first started college. And so for me, it's just kind of, you know, I like listening to the experts and hearing different people talk about different topics from, you know, health and wellness to business to even journalism to anything, you know, science.
Absolutely.
So
That's
I
how
like it.
that's how I was doing it at first, and that's when I decided, hey, I'm starting my own podcast, and here I am. But overall, I want to ask you a couple of quick questions and kind of
Okay.
a little bit into my world, so to speak. All right, I'm gonna ask you, of course, a list of questions, bring you a little bit into my world a little bit. And I'm
Okay.
gonna start with this question. What is the first thing you do or think of as far as when you wake up to start your day? And what is your personal morning routine, if there is one?
Sure. Well, so right now, Clifton, I haven't even started my new job. So I get to kind of do whatever I want right now. So I wake up and I guess my first thought, my first thing, what I want to get good at and what I want to start doing is meditating when I first wake up in the morning.
I recommend
And
it's
do
beautiful.
you? Because I I've tried it a couple times. I've even downloaded apps and I just can't get into it. And I think it's because I'm not consistent. You know, I try it one time, two times, and then it's like, okay, you know, but that's what I'm trying to, you know, get myself to do. Because honestly, what I first do in the morning is not good. And that's look at my phone. And I know it's not good, you know, and I don't want to be like that. I will get up, I'll make coffee, make breakfast, and I'll kind of, you know, figure out how I'm going to go about my day, which right now it's just going to the gym and hanging out with my family. You know, I'm not really doing anything exciting. But what I would like to do, because I'm going to have this new schedule starting in about a week or so, I want to get up early and at least meditate for about 10 minutes and then go to the gym and then start my work day. So to me, in my mind, that sounds great. I just need to actually get there. So that's definitely something I need to work on.
I personally would recommend that you meditate at least for 5 minutes every morning before you start your day. That alone makes a big difference, and that's something that I pride myself on doing every single morning. And another book I would recommend you read this book. I don't know if you've heard of this book or not. It's called The Miracle Morning by Hfwb. It's
Okay.
basically the not so obvious things you can do to get your day started before 8 a.m. It's a very good book, and it teaches you how to create a morning routine and how you can be successful and
Oh,
consistent with it. And it talks about the importance of meditation in it. It doesn't go that deep into it, but it says, hey, it's important to, have some moment of silence, whether it's prayer, whether it's meditation, whether it's breathing. It's very, very important as far as for the mind, because if you train the mind, the body will follow. So
I
that
love
would
that.
be something I would recommend you check out, definitely for sure.
How do you meditate, if you don't mind me asking? Like, what do you do specifically?
I have an app called Balance, and it has a
Okay.
special meditation called Wake Up in Gratitude. I click that. I have it set for like 5 minutes. I close my eyes and I breathe and I just meditate, do like 24 breaths, and then boom. By the time I do all that, the meditation's over, and then I'm ready to start.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm gonna try that. Okay.
definitely, definitely. But my next question that I have for you is, what is health and wealth in your eyes, and what's your personal definition of it?
Health and wellness in my eyes. So my goal in life, and I've had this goal for maybe, gosh, more than 10. and she was like 65 years old and still kicking, and I would see her in the gym on the treadmill, and I just thought, I want to be like her. Her name's Candy. And
Mhm.
I thought, okay, if I can be like Candy at 65 years old, then that's amazing. So I've always loved to stay healthy, and I want my body to be right. I go to the gym, I'm active, I'm outside all the time, I take my vitamins, so I'm very strict in that, but it's just because I enjoy it. So I think for me, it's just, if you can move properly, if you can, go hiking with your family, play with your family, do things with your dog, or, just go to the beach and go swimming, and you don't feel crazy exhausted, then at least you're in the right direction, and that's healthy enough for you. I want people to live as long as possible, and I don't want people to have to rely on medications or say, oh, my family comes from diabetes. Okay, well, that doesn't mean you necessarily have to, go in that same direction.
That is
So,
exactly my point. That's
mhm.
basically the core of health, fitness, wealth business is exactly what you said. And I appreciate you, Chelsea, for saying that, because
Thank you.
in my whole point of what I'm doing. So
Mhm.
I appreciate that for sure. What what are your favorite kind of hobbies to do on a regular basis when you're not working?
I really like roller skating. I love being outside.
Right.
So, even if it's something like just going roller skating at a park, I really like doing that. I just got into it last year and I'm not good at it, but it's just fun. It's a different kind of activity.
Right.
And I like going hiking. And what else do I like to do? Ugh, nothing crazy. I have a bow that I'll shoot in my backyard.
Any secret talents you want to tell anybody for the people listening? Like, what does Chelsea Torres like to do?
And it's just, I don't know, I just like to be active. I get very antsy, laying around or sitting down all day. So if I
Right.
can do something outside, then that's probably my go-to.
That's a great go-to. Staying active and being outside. There's nothing wrong with that. There's more people who need to do that. Now,
Mm-hmm.
my last question I have for you, Chelsea, and this should be an interesting one, and I want to hear your thought on this.
Okay.
What would you tell yourself 10 years ago, and where do you see yourself personally in 10 years from now?
Oh, so 10 years ago, I would have told myself, just keep going because, you know, I never saw myself getting out of TV a whole year ago. And when that opportunity came, I wasn't looking for it. They came to me and I thought, wow, some people see how I work and they want me to work for them. Okay. I'm going to take that leap of faith and I'm going to try it. So keep going, because even though I had a whole year of being out of news, I'm now getting back in news and I'm in an even bigger market and I'm back home. So, I mean, that's great, but it's like, the grind doesn't stop. Right. And so I definitely would have told myself to keep going. As for the next 10 years, so I talked about sports reporting. I really love watching MMA, the UFC fights. I like watching boxing. And so those are my two things that I'm really into. And so I've kind of started doing my own little, not a podcast, but just like little quick MMA talk on social media. And so I would like to I would like to expand that maybe in the next 10 years. I don't know if that necessarily means, working for a network. I think that would be so cool. I have 2 years on my contract here in San Antonio. And then maybe after, I'll kind of see whether I want to stay here or if I want to move up to an even bigger market and keep growing that news career. But I still want to be able to do sports too. So it's kind of a matter of juggling both. But if I can do both in the next 10 years and make it on a bigger platform, then that's the bigger goal in sight.
Okay, and since you mentioned how much you love and are passionate about sports, for the people listening, what are Chelsea Bonus's favorite sports teams ever?
Okay, so of course I'm from San Antonio, Spurs all the way. I'm a huge, huge Spurs fan. I'm a big Cowboys fan. I watch Dallas Cowboys all the time. Grew up a Cowboys fan. My dad and my sister went to A&M. So when you're talking college football, I grew up an Aggie, and I actually ended up graduating from Texas State. But I'm a very bad, I take a lot of pride in my school, but I just don't follow their athletics as much. So, so I follow more A&M athletics than anything. And then I guess that's kind of it when it comes to those, because baseball, I don't really keep up with unless it's like the home run derby. I love watching that. And
obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I am too. If it's not the All-Star game or the World Series, baseball I'm cool with.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll watch it, if it's on, but I'm not going to go looking for a game. But yeah, those are the big teams. And then when it comes to, just MMA, I like to watch every UFC fight. So if I can watch all the fights, then I'm good.
Who's your favorite UFC fighter at this very moment?
Oh,
Make a difference right now?
I knew you were going to ask that. Man, that's really hard. So right now it'd probably be Israel Adesanya. He's a great fighter. He's from New Zealand, and I just love his fighting style. He's like our age, I think. I don't know how old you are, Clifton, but I'm 30. 29. Oh, you're 29. Okay. So he's like, he's our age. And I feel like he's just, he's fun and he's into anime. I like anime. And so he's just kind of like a cool dude and he's fun to watch. He's really great. He's an amazing skill set. So I'd say he's probably my favorite at the moment.
Okay. I'll definitely have to look out for him for sure, because I'm not going to lie. I love watching UFC myself too. But at the same time, it's hard to keep up with all the fighters because it's like there's a new fighter every time I'm turning on like a UFC fight night or on a pay-per-view. I'm like, man, I can't keep up with it like I used to. But I'll keep it in mind just because he's your favorite fighter for sure.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that.
Now, before we end this episode, for the people who want to know where they can find more about you and follow your journey, what is your go-to ways of getting in contact with you?
Sure. Instagram, I'm on all the time. And you can find me at Yes, I'm Chelsea. It's very simple. Yes, I'm Chelsea. And then I just got TikTok like a week ago. And I'm kind of, dabbling into that because people seem to really be all about it. And it's just Chelsea Chats. So, and I'm on Twitter. Those are my three. I'm really into Instagram and Twitter. And then I just got TikTok. So if you can find me on any three of those, I'm on there all the time.
You heard it here first. If you want to get in contact with Chelsea, look her up on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, because you can never count out TikTok. Believe me, it's becoming the new popular social media trend. Well, it already is, and it's just going to continue to grow and get better. But overall, I just want to say thank you so much, Chelsea, for taking time to be in on this HFWB podcast series. We appreciate it. And of course, you're more than welcome to come back on anytime if you want to give us an update on where you are in your life. Definitely.
Clifton, I would love that. Thank you so much for even asking me. I'm honored. I appreciate you.
No, of course. And thank you, Chelsea, for being a guest today on the HFWB podcast series. And for everybody who's currently listening right now, this is your host, Clifton Pope, signing out by saying stay healthy, stay wealthy, and stay blessed. Till next time, everybody.